Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have the most scariest part of the story.
What was your best comeback line that left the other person speechless? While working at a paint store, my assistant manager was giving me grief because I wanted to get off early to go take a final. She said, when I was going to school and working, if there was ever a conflict between school and work, work always came first. I replied, that's probably why you're still working here. Had a friend whose girlfriend broke up with him at a party, in front of many people who stood around gawking. To really make it sting, she told him he was terrible in bed. Without missing a beat, he said, just because all you ever want is anal, doesn't make me bad in bed. The look on her face is something I remember to this day. My friend has leukemia and has to undergo chemo a year ago, and it was very apparent that he was doing it. Anyways, he was arguing with someone and ended the argument by saying, wow, that comeback was so bad it gave me cancer. Back in the late 60s I had very long hair and wore the flowery stuff that was the fashion, no onion in my belt though. Anyway, I was dating this girl whose mom hated me. After a snotty exchange, I asked her what her problem with me was and she said, I think you are effeminate. I replied, compared to you I guess I am. A guy I worked with at Blockbuster got his driver's license taken away after too many DUIs. He was at the time 27 years old. So, after the license revoking, he gets dropped off at work by his mother in an SUV. He comes in and he's making fun of coworkers and being a pretentious douche, and I have had enough about 20 minutes in. I looked him in the eye after he called someone a loser and I said, Dan, didn't your mommy drop you off at work today? Was it your turn to bring orange slices to soccer practice? That was the end of his mockery of everyone for the day. This is the most surreal thing that happened to me in middle school, and that's saying something. A guy went around telling people he saw me touching myself in the bathroom. I was in a stall and shaking out the last few drops, so, yes, actually. Is that weird or what? I remember because he looked into the stall and kept staring at me and giggling for no reason. At the time I thought it was because I was white. Anyway, one of my friends came over the next day at lunch and told me he was spreading it around and that he saw me jacking it. So, I go over to this dude's table, and he looks at me and laughs. I ask him if he always stares at guys for that long in the restroom or if it's just me he's interested in, and, now that I've called him gay, suddenly his friends didn't think it was funny anymore. Keep in mind I'm gay. I really don't like contributing to homophobia, but I kind of loved the looks they gave him as I was walking away. Scooting away, etc. I never understood, nor will I ever understand teenage/preteen boys. I was at the bank cashing a check I had received from helping tile a neighbor's house. The neighbor liked to go to a lot of strip clubs, and being from a small town the bank teller knew him, and evidently that fact. She looked at me, smiled, and asked if I wanted the check-in ones, so that I could go out later. Insinuating frequenting a strip club, without missing a beat I replied, only if you'll be there. She blushed and everyone laughed. The teller handed me my money, flustered, and speechless. Thought of another one that I didn't say. So, I was walking through Spain in a smallish town. It was a hot day and people were wandering through the streets. There were 2 English tourists stood on their balcony overhanging the streets. They shouted to these 2 fit-looking Spanish girls and started singing the Queen song, "We are the champions, we are the champions." One of the hot girls turns and shouts, "No time for losers." It was a glorious moment. While shopping for houses a few weeks ago with my wife, I mentioned I didn't like this house because it lacked a garage, and out of frustration my wife snapped, "I don't know why you want a garage, you suck at working on cars." I instantly fired back with, "I don't know why you want a nice kitchen, you suck at cooking." Both her and the real estate agent were pretty quiet after that. I had to cook every meal for 2 weeks, so I feel like I lost the war. I love that woman. A fat girl in high school used to always give me a hard time. I slimmed down one summer from a growth spurt, and when she passed me in the hallway she smiled and shouted in mock enthusiasm, "Hey! Have you lost weight?" Reflecting back her mock enthusiasm, I smiled and shouted, "Hey! Have you found it?" She never spoke to me again. Not super proud of this, but it did shut the guy up. I deservedly got punched in the nose in middle school for making fun of a kid and was ridiculed by other kids because I was crying after it happened. For the next few years, another kid always teased me about it. He would always ask how my nose was and all I would ever mutter was a damn you, or something equivalent. Well, in 10th grade his mother had passed away and he was gone for a few weeks to deal with it. One of the days he came back, I walked past him on the stairs, and he asked his usual question, "Hey New Green, how's your nose?" I guess I finally had enough and snapped back at him with, "Hey, how's your mom?" He never talked to me again. I feel terrible about it, but he kind of had it coming. Yesterday I was at a local party and passed a group of about 5 while on the way to the toilet. One of the guys in the group said, "Wow, you are fat," which is true. Laughing face, I just replied, "Yeah, and you are ugly, life is tough for us." That sentence had him flabbergasted and the girls in the group laughing, and while I gave myself a little jab it just felt so good to shut that guy up. Bit of a backstory here. I worked with a guy who was a huge Mac enthusiast. Me being a PC guy, we'd occasionally have fun sessions ripping into each other. The company we worked for came out with a promotion for free installation of the PC version of a piece of software, not the Mac version. Why did they do that? That's biased against Mac people. Me, because Mac users suck. Well, truthfully, you put the disk in on a Mac and it installs itself. If anything, Mac users would need more help. They'll put the disk in shiny side up because it's prettier. I got nothing. My friend in high school wore her own shorts on sports day because she thought the school ones were too short, and one day her sport teacher got so angry he yelled, "Natalie, take those shorts off right now," and she looked him square in the eye and goes, "Shouldn't you wine me and dine me first, sir?" She got suspended and it was great. Walking down Main Street in Huntington Beach is slim fit jeans with my friend, also wearing slim fit jeans, when we pass a group of 3 larger bro guys, all obviously using steroids, wearing terrible Hitman fight gear, tap out famous stars and straps. As we are passing them on the sidewalk, one of them says, "Nice pants, faggots." My buddy casually stops and with a straight face and no sign of anger says, "Yeah, you know, I thought these were great pants too. That's why I took them after I ducked your sister last night." The 3 bro guys stop, look pissed for a minute, and then the one who insulted us smiles and says, "I did not expect that at all." Good comeback. Then after a long pause they walked on, and so did we. Strangest ever I have experienced. At the hearing where my divorce was final, my ex-wife cleaned up. Got the house, the TV she took when she left that was mine, the TV I bought to replace it, half the money in savings, and I had to pay spousal support for 8 months and an exorbitant amount of child support. The only thing I got was half the credit card debt, $9K, and 8 of it was hers, and I had to pay for her sick bag attorney, another $2K. We walked out of the courtroom, her friend and mom came for moral support. She walks up all smug and says, "How'd you like that?" Her contorite was smiling, too. I replied, "They can take my house, my TV, and every penny I have, but they can't make me love you." Instantly the smiles changed to drop jaws. She looked at me like I kicked a cancer baby, and before anyone could speak I said good day and walked off. Then I went home and cried. My grandfather was very conservative and a supporter of Barry Goldwater. We live in AZ. At dinner when my dad was roughly 13, his dad was telling the family about how awesome Goldwater was, how he'd be the next president, and how minorities sucked, basically. My dad chimed in, "He has always been very political and liberal. Goldwater is a hawk, he'll never be president, he just wants to start a war," something along those lines. Apparently Granddad was tired of dealing with 8 kids for that day and hauled off and hit my dad off of the stool he was sitting on. Through tears he responded, "You can beat me up, but you can't make me wrong." Turns out he was right. In high school, my classmates and I were waiting outside of the room for math class as the teacher had not yet arrived. The hall monitor, a big, burly, mean prick, walks up to us and yells at us to get to class. Nobody says anything for a beat, then I step up and say, "You heard the man, everybody walks through that locked door and get to class." While I was washing the dishes that my sister was supposed to wash, she came up behind me and said, "You're so skinny." I'm 5 feet 2 inches with a small body frame, I weigh about 115, I tell her to go away, and she starts poking me. Turtle cage, I can see your spine. You're a skeleton. You're so skinny, it's terrifying. Well, I say. You're fat. She instantly starts crying. I never said sorry. Never will. Wasn't mine, but I'll never forget. We were in 6th grade and there was this kid that was always the troublemaker, Richie. One day while Richie was making trouble in Mr. F's class, Mr. F reached his breaking point. Richie, quit screwing around and being disruptive and just apply yourself. You are going to be 40 years old still in the 6th grade. Richie looked him dead in the eye and retorted, you're 40 and still in the 6th grade. My grandmother came with my family on holiday one year when I was about 10 and spent pretty much the entire time moaning her face off and shouting at all the kids for running around and making noise. On a beach FFS. After I dared to answer her back, she snapped, you really are good for nothing, to which I replied, yeah, well the only good thing about you is that when you die, we get everything you own. She wouldn't speak to me for days afterwards, even after my mother forced me to apologize.
About 7 years ago, I went shopping with one of my sisters and my mom. I decided to buy some women's pants, I'm a guy, that fit me, and they only had that color in women. My grandmother came with my family on holiday one year when I was about 10 and spent pretty much the entire time moaning her face off and shouting at all the kids for running around and making noise. On a beach FFS. After I dared to answer her back, she snapped, you really are good for nothing, to which I replied, yeah, well the only good thing about you is that when you die, we get everything you own. She wouldn't speak to me for days afterwards, even after my mother forced me to apologize. About 7 years ago, I went shopping with one of my sisters and my mom. I decided to buy some women's pants, I'm a guy, that fit me, and they only had that color in women. As the cashier, a girl named Tyler, rang them up, she sneered at me, you know you're buying women's pants, right? To which I replied, you know you have a boy's name, right? This remark was met with applause from my mom and sister, another cashier, and the man behind us. I was working in a deli and asked, are you together? To two people who happened to be male. I wasn't implying something, just wondering if I should call someone over from the back to take his order or not. The first guy responds, extremely defensively, no we are not. The Bible says Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. To which I responded, also says not to work on a Sunday or eat pork. Here's your ham, it was a Sunday, too. My brother was driving, perfectly I might add, when a lady with her daughter drove up next to him, rolled down her window and started yelling at him, yada kids these days, yada hurry up, yada learns how to drive as whole. Brother, without missing a beat, sticks his whole head out the window and yells, shut up bitch, I'll cut your daughter's tits of. So ridiculous, so quick, so vulgar, lady put up the window and sped off. There's no comeback anyone can muster after a comment like that. I'm a cook and was being told off by a waiter, who was probably in his mid-40s, for not showing enough respect. He was really angry and said some nasty things about us and cooks in general. I just looked him in the eyes and totally calm said, at least I will be proud telling my grandchildren what I did with my life. He went pale and left the room. Guess I hit a nerve. My problem is I know what to say when it goes down. We were in St. Petersburg, Russia, waiting in line for Peter of Palace. A group from France behind us were infiltrating the lines and trying to skip ahead. I heard a lady behind me say, in French, let's go ahead of the Americans, they won't understand. I speak French, so I turned over my shoulder and said, why don't you stay back there where you belong? Thing is, my French is actually Canadian, and the lady said, oh, they're Canadian, forget it.
One time at school, this guy snuck a tampon out of my bag, took it out of the wrapper, put a pencil in the wrapper and put it back in my bag, and kept the tampon himself. I didn't discover it till I went to the bathroom and found a pencil instead of a tampon. What was he planning? Like I wouldn't notice, and I'd stick a pencil up my vagina? My friend came into the bathroom and said he was planning to shoot the tampon at me when I came back out. Apparently, he thought they were spring-loaded or something. He was not very bright. He told everyone he was going to do it. Somehow he thought it was impressive. I'm not sure why. I walked back out of the bathroom. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Chris, congrats on finally getting your period, but if you need a tampon, don't be embarrassed to ask your mom. I'm sure she'd be happy to buy her little girl a box." At a friend's house, with some people hanging out, when a friend says to me, "You know you are the only one here without an iPhone," laughing as he says it. Without any hesitation I respond with, "Yeah, kind of like how you are the only virgin here." He stopped talking for a while after that. I am probably too late on this thread for this to get noticed, but it made me feel great.
I was in for a 6-month status check with the operations staff at work. As soon as I sat down, the chief looked at me and says, "We need to talk about your parking down at base." Now I drive a heavy truck and the lot behind base is very small. If I'm in a rush I make sure it's between the lines, but that's about it. I am also openly gay and responded with, "I park as straight as I am." The entire staff broke out laughing. Chief didn't have a response. Driving home after a movie with my brother, we stopped at a red light and some teenage kids pulled up next to me in a minivan and started revving the engine. I rolled down my window and sarcastically said, "Nice car." The kid driver responded with, "Nice face," typical stupid comeback, to which I replied, "Hey thanks, your mom sure did enjoy it when she was sitting on it last night." His friends laughed and then I drove off since the light changed. I was doing a presentation in class using PowerPoint. One of my friends who loves to make fun of people made a slick comment when one of my jokes fell flat, and he just laughed at me and said, "Fail." I knew I had to say something back, and remembering a lyric from a rap song, I said in front of the class and teacher with a serious tone, "Arnell, if you can take a joke." The class erupted in laughter and my friend got red cheeks and tried to laugh it off as well. Pure bliss was that moment. It wasn't really a comeback, but a good moment. I was hanging out with a handful of friends at one of their houses when one of the girls, there were 4 there at the time, had the wild idea for everyone to get in the kiddie pool and cool off. It was a hot day. We'll have to go somewhere to get a garden hose. Me, I think we have all the hose we need right here. Worked at Arby's when I was 16. The GM was talking to me about my college ambitions and telling me I was stupid to go to a 4-year school that would cost $50,000 a year. He was running out of his mouth about how he had only gone to college for 1 semester, at a party school, and asked why I wanted to go. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "So I don't have to be a manager at Arby's." He stopped mocking me after that. My aunt, who was severely schizophrenic and kind of up there, said this. Still makes me laugh. My great aunt was a big complainer and always had something wrong with her. Anyways, my mom, my aunt, my great aunt, and I went to a nice dinner. During the dinner, my great aunt wouldn't stop complaining about aches and pains, etc. Out of nowhere my aunt says, "Well, Aunt Polly, you are about ready for us to take you to the glue factory." Still makes me chuckle. I think this was my best. When I was about 30, my authoritarian father said to me, "Whether you're 10 or 30, I will always be your father, and that gives me the right to tell you what to do." Without skipping a beat, I replied, "Whether I'm 10 or 30, I will always be your son, and that gives me the right to tell you to leave." For once he had no retort. But his face got extra red. High school sports team trip. The new coach looked like Gargamela from the Smurfs, had inexplicably brought along a hot college cheerleader to the room with him. Younger kids on the team were goofing off and the coach received complaints. He came over to yell at all of us. "Someone had called me over here and told me to take control of you little monsters." Without missing a beat, youngest team member casually says, "You need to control your little monster." We all lost it eventually, even the coach. One time I was working in a building that had this angry pasty white. I thought he might have been albino, but he had colored eyes, and a bunched up back, like a hunchback sort of thing. Sounds like I'm making this up, but I'm not. So anyway, he was getting upset over something, can't remember what, and he says, "Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." I say, "I know." "How do you know?" He's totally taken aback by my response. "'Cause I don't like anyone when they are angry." My wife judges baton twirling contests. I decided to tag along. We're in a suburb of Toronto, and a few drunk hosers are watching a Leafs game at the hotel bar. I'm with my wife and 3 of her, female, judge colleagues staying at the hotel. They do the math and decide I've got to be gay, so they tease me about it. I don't consider this to be an insult, America. No one gets the better of us, especially not a Canadian, especially in Canasta. So, after about a half hour of ignoring various derivations of halakha, batons. Gay, eh? My wife and I quietly get up, and I say to them, I says, gentlemen, it was a pleasure meeting you. Now if you excuse me, I'm going to go upstairs with my wife. I won. Mercia.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.